On this podcast, we cover sensitive subjects such as abuse, suicide, self-harm, depression, and other difficult topics. We are not medical professionals. We suffer from our own mental health issues. Our opinions should not be taken as medical advice. Dread the Stigma is for educational purposes and awareness for mental health only.
And welcome another Sunday, Dread the Stigma. I'm Modus B. Dreads. We have Lydia Manson, the one who does all of the prep, basically.
No.
She's the note taker. I'm the mouth.
I'm just the big nerd.
Well, and it is very much appreciated because you were hinting around at some very interesting stuff that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about, psychiatric hospitals, the evolution, how they were, how they are now. And we also have a friend of yours met through making films, which is really cool. Very cool. Let's bring her on. Nick, welcome to Dread the Stigma. How are you?
Hey.
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, well, I think it's going to be a good conversation. I think it's going to be pretty interesting. I think we're going to learn a lot tonight. Yes, Smithson's Creations. Welcome, buddy.
He's like our number one fan.
He really is. He really is. I did a little movie with him earlier this year. Good guy. So, first of all, we're talking. You're a therapist, Nick. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive right into it.
I don't know. What do you want to know? Like, I'm originally from Pennsylvania. I currently live in Illinois, just on the east side of St. Louis. I have a 25-year-old son. Just got married in June. So, pretty proud of him.
Awesome.
And about it's been a year and a half ago that I started my own private practice. I've had a lot of good support in my journey in through getting my social work degree. And I finally just took the plunge and I was like, fine, okay, I'll do it. 'Cause like I have this one friend who's been, they've been hounding me like forever. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to do it. And it's been fantastic ever since. Like it's exactly where I know that I'm supposed to be. Even a year and a half into it, I love my job. I love going in. I love being able to see people get the confidence and courage to make the changes that they want to make, and feel the support that they need in order to make those changes. So it's been great.
That's got to be so rewarding as a therapist, because you're not dealing with broken bones, you're dealing with a broken mind. And, to see that change has got to be very, very rewarding. Now, what kind of therapy do you provide? As we were talking earlier, you're not zeroed in on really any one disorder. Like, some therapists zero in on personality disorders, which is very hard to deal with. You provide therapy for a broad range of mental health or mental illnesses.
Oh yeah, like some of my first clients, I've had people who were dealing with suicidal thoughts, and like they had just come out of the hospital, and worked with them. Like a lot of what I do is talk therapy, and just providing them a space to be heard. Because I think, like in my experience in being in the mental health field, even like 4 or 5 years ago, I worked with individuals with severe and chronic mental health, like schizophrenia, schizoid, severe bipolar with psychotic features.
Mm.
And the biggest thing there was like they didn't feel like their voice was heard. I've been very blessed to be able to make really good connections really quickly with individuals, just to like let them voice what they need to let out, and then work with them to get to where they want to go. And so with everybody, like I've dealt with people who've had sexual abuse, who have been like cutting, who have eating disorders, who have agoraphobia. Like I even have some older individuals that have lost their spouses, and kind of managing through grief. So like I run the whole gamut on stuff in my office.
Well, it sounds like you know, as you said, it's like where you need to be, where you want to be, and that's where you're doing your it's a passion work.
Oh yeah.
And it is hard to get therapy. I think my and depending on the disorder or whatnot that you're getting therapy for. I know as someone with borderline, as we mentioned, personality disorders are hard. Are hard. Therapists sometimes need therapists to help them through. That's crazy. I mean, do you deal with any kind of personality disorders at all, or is that something a little too involved?
So I had an individual who had borderline personality disorder when I first started. I have very strict boundaries within my office. And so she struggled with those boundaries a lot. And so I met with her weekly, and then she had some issues, and we went to bi-week. We were going twice a week. And then, we had lots of discussions about, the boundaries and her being able to abide by them. And she just wasn't. And I ended up having to let her know that I couldn't see her anymore, because she had crossed a lot of boundaries, especially one where she was starting to have romantic feelings for me. And so, I tried to, have her see somebody else, and that just wasn't what she wanted. And she also suffered with alcoholism. And so, then you have the dual diagnosis, right? And so then I was like, well, in order for me to even help you, we first have to get your drinking under control, because I can't do anything until you get the drinking under control. And, I probably saw her for at least 8 to 10 months. And she just wasn't ready. She I was, as you go through the mental health gamut, people will be like, oh, they're just attention seeking. They're attention seeking. Yeah. Well, sure. Everybody's attention seeking. Everybody wants attention. Everybody wants to feel connected, right? Yeah. And so if she's asking for it, what is it that's missing from her life that she's not getting it? And she has to go elsewhere to get it. And, so I just have to be careful about how I fulfill that for her. Right. And, and she just struggled with it. And, if she were to come back, if she got her drinking under control and she were to come back, there would have to be a really long discussion on if I'd take her back underneath my care. But for the most part, because even personality disorders is on a spectrum. I think every mental health diagnosis is on a spectrum. And so it's just figuring out where on the spectrum that person is, and if they have the insight to know that where they're at, and if they want to make changes. And she wasn't ready to make the changes yet. So
the alcohol is never a good thing. I put myself in the hospital, not because I did anything, but I had very strong urges. And I spent about a week there. I got put on some medication, and I've been sober ever since. And, you know, pouring alcohol on a personality disorder is gasoline on a fire. So not
Absolutely.
something you definitely have to kind of cleanse yourself of those things that are clouding you. That way you can attack it sober. Lydia, I got past the mic. I've been talking too much.
Well, I was going to kind of like segue into tonight's topic and be like,
Okay.
so how did we get to the point in mental health treatment where we're able to have talk therapy? We're able
Yeah.
to have hospitalizations. We're able to have medications help us, because that was not always the case. So in my research, I actually came across, it's called the 4 Cycles of Reform Movement. So this is the history of psychosis treatment. So the first era is moral treatment, and this is from the early 1800s to about 1890. And this was freestanding asylums. And then we go into the mental hygiene movement from 1890 to about the World War II era. And this is psychiatric hospitals and clinics were introduced. And then we go into the community mental health reform period from the end of World War II to about the late 1970s, which is community mental health centers were then created. Now, these 3 movements actually were trying to achieve disability prevention. So they were looking at it as, people that have these issues and are being debilitated by them, they wanted to essentially just cure them. But as we know now, people can live with these issues. They don't have to be quote unquote cured.
Right.
And then we go into present day, which we are in the community support era. So this cycle focuses on treating people with serious mental illness. And this cycle also highlights the possibility of early intervention before your illness becomes a disability. So helping you see that you have these issues before they completely take over yourself.
Yeah.
Now, inside of these 4 eras, sociologists have also identified a process that social movements have gone through. And it starts with a preliminary stage where people become aware of an issue and leaders emerge. And then we go to and I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation of this word, coalescence stage. And this is people join together and organize to raise awareness and publicize the issue. And then we go into the institutionalization stage, and that's the movement that becomes an established organization, usually with paid staff, and it no longer relies on grassroots volunteers as it had been in the past. I mean, if you go back before the 1800s, so before it actually became these movements, I mean, I know we've all read about like those crazy stories about like women who were having mental health issues. They would go and see psychiatrists and they would use vibrators to help treat the diagnosis.
Yep.
Even, the Salem witch trials, we all know how that went about. So it's very interesting to see how time has evolved with taking care of mental illnesses. It used to just, it would, if you were suffering, oh, you're a witch. You know, it was always something else that it was put on.
You could be schizophrenic, but you're like possessed
Yes.
by the devil because you're acting in ways that people don't understand.
Exactly.
That's almost like the beginning of you know, your stigma, the one thing we're trying to get rid of so people are comfortable coming out and getting that help. And you don't want it to go too far. Preventative help. If there's issues there, attack it early. And that wasn't the case with me. But, you know, I'm dealing with it and things are
Well,
getting
luckily
better.
we weren't sick back in the early 1800s and
You got that right.
being chained up
Yeah.
and, you know, all of these crazy things to help cure us of
Yeah.
these issues.
The infamous ice pick through the eye, lobotomy.
Yeah, yes.
Oh God, that's just something out of a horror movie.
Electroshock therapy.
Absolutely crazy, man.
Which I mean,
Bloodletting.
yes, bloodletting, because
Yeah.
they saw it as that the illness was in your blood. So if they slowly drain you of that, then you're cured.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Nothing bad could come about that, huh?
Right.
Jeez.
So yes. Ice water immersion.
Yep.
Beatings.
No, that will
There's
always
no
help.
way to make you better than to
Than a good
beat the
ad
crap out of
beating.
you.
Yeah.
So they, you know, during the first movement, the moral treatment movement, it was developed in a stark response to these dismal interventions, they called it. And so they wanted to use medical and psychological frameworks to view mental illness as a physical condition that altered behavior through physical changes in the brain. So it was in the mid-19th century that the terminology for severe mental disorders were now recognized as psychotic disorders. So some of those were delirium or dementia, as well as mania and toxic psychosis. So the term psychosis is actually recorded as early as 1845.
Wow.
So, I mean, you know, over 200, coming up on almost 300 years, you know?
Yeah.
So very interesting. Do either of you have anything to say? I don't want to be the only one that's talking. I feel like I always end up taking over every show.
No, I learned a lot right there. That was very interesting. It is crazy how much we have progressed, as you just mentioned. The term psychosis was, you know, about 300 years old now, you know, if not, you know, more. And I just wanted to again elaborate on seeking help and not waiting. You know, sometimes the symptoms have to show, but a lot of times they're not recognized by the parents. I understand that the symptoms that I have now, I did have when, you know, I was preteen and then teenage, you know, years. So it had to be something linking that, and that was not recognized by myself, really. I didn't know. I just thought this was how it was. And it wasn't recognized by my mom, my stepdad, any of my family members. So there's nothing wrong then. And then it got bad to where self-harm started happening. I was a cutter. Haven't done that in quite some time either. So, you know, that's when everybody was like, hey, something's wrong. But I had already gotten, you know, waist deep in this, and then still did not have any kind of continuous therapy and using that. What would it be? The community era there? Is that what it was, where you have like you know, like we kind of have now, the therapist and
yes, we're in the community support era now.
yeah. So it is important to catch these what could turn out to be, uncontrollable, and have to go to drastic measures, and have to possibly rely on medication. I'm one of them. There's no shame in it. It's helping me. It may not help the next person. We're all different. Speaking of the community part of it, and therapy, and this is obviously directed towards you, Nick. Do you, I know after COVID, there was that's where the telehealth thing all started, coming about. I wanted to ask you about that. Do you offer that? And then I wanted to ask, and give advice to anybody that may feel they need to talk to a therapist. Usually have to go through a handful, sometimes more, before you find the right one, and people get discouraged. What advice do you have for that? And do you do a lot of telehealth, or is it all in person?
So where I'm at now, I do offer telehealth. For me, it's a little harder when doing telehealth, but I do offer it because, like I said, I do have a couple of people who have agoraphobia, so they struggle to come out of the house, right? So we're working on that. I find it easier to get a better connection with an individual when we're sitting across from each other. Yeah. And so what I tell people the first time that I meet somebody or they come into my office, like I have a little spiel, I let them know how I do my therapy because like I'm a pretty straight shooter. I don't sugarcoat anything. I let them know that we're in here to make changes. And if we're not ready, then we need to really think about what we're doing. And I let them know too, like I don't want them to be embarrassed. I don't want them to worry about my feelings. I don't need them to worry about me at all because this is about them. And that, I've lived some life, and so that there's not a lot I haven't seen or heard. And then I also tell them that if they don't feel like we're having a good connection, to let me know because I am not there just to collect money. Yes, it may be my job, but what is important to me is that they find somebody that they find a connection with in order to make the changes that they want to make. Absolutely. I often tell them that like finding a therapist is kind of like dating. You need to find somebody that you really connect with. And if it's not me, that's fine. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Like I need you to find somebody that you feel comfortable talking to and making the changes with and who you feel supported by. Because it's just a scary thing to make that very first appointment. And and I thank them for that, for stepping up and taking care of themselves. And that if they need my assistance to find somebody that they feel comfortable with, if that's not me, I provide that. Because it's a hard thing to find somebody that you can find a good connection with. So.
Yeah, I actually just went through something similar. I finally found somebody that a therapist that was a good fit as far as the type of therapies that they handled, and one being personality disorder. So DBT and CBT was the direction I wanted to go. Because fortunately, as hard as it is to live with BPD, it's very, in a sense, curable. People can go back and without the use of a lot of medications. I've major depressive disorder, so there's some mood stabilizers in there. But I completely forgot where I was going with this.
Well,
it isn't that good.
Somebody that we have to thank, her name is actually Dorothea Dix, and she is, I would say, the main reason that we have mental institutions in every state now. So back in the moral treatment era, so that this is the first one. So we're talking about early 1800s. Asylums were privately owned. So we all know privately owned, there's no regulations. So Dorothea Dix, she actually, she went and kind of investigated these asylums, and she saw how the individuals were locked up and their medical needs were not being satisfied, since private hospitals would only have so much provisions. And it was during her time at East Cambridge prison that she visited the basement, where she encountered that there was 4 mentally ill individuals whose cells were just dark and bare, and the air was stagnant and foul. And she also saw that these individuals were being labeled as loony paupers, and they were just locked up with violently deranged criminals, and were just receiving inhumane treatment. Like we were saying, they were being chained, they were, being cut to let their blood out that people were viewing as toxic. So she saw that these privately owned asylums were unregulated and underfunded, and this was just not working. So she made it her mission to kind of help along that. So we have her to thank that there are not, that back then, even that each state had at least one federally regulated, I guess you could say, asylum, so that they were actually helping. So she had the her plea was to provide moral treatment for the mentally ill, to make them feel like they were actually people. And like Nick had said earlier, that people just want their voices to be heard. So she had 3 core values, and that was modesty, chastity, and delicacy. And she was kind of like turned down a lot on her, I would say, road to getting this done. And it wasn't until she was able to give an example to the Senate of a man who was formerly a very respected legislator and jurist, and he ended up suffering. He kind of went on a mental decline, and he fell into hard times in his old age. And when Dorothea went to visit him, she discovered that he was just lying on a small bed in a basement room of the county asylum, and he didn't even have necessary comforts. And what she wrote about this man was this feeble and depressed old man, a pauper, helpless, lonely, but he was conscious of his surrounding circumstances and not wholly oblivious of his past. So he understood that he had come from this prestigious, position as a respected legislator, and now he's just this feeble old man. So Dorothea, talked about this, and it wasn't until she had done this that the Senate finally realized. So her resolution to authorize an asylum passed the very next day. So, we really have her to thank for that cycle of reform in mental illness and treatment. So, it goes to show that, one person, we always say, oh, I'm just one person. Like I can't do anything. You are one person, and you can make a difference. It's difficult. She tried for years. And she, not only through the US, she was in Europe, spouting these same ideals. She even was in Rome and speaking with the Pope. So it just goes to show that, one person can help worldwide. So I thought that was very interesting. If anybody, is interested in reading up on Dorothea Dix, I highly recommend it. Very interesting person. She ended up being a Civil War nurse. So she not only helped mental health, she also was on the battlefield,
Right.
you know, right in there, you know. So she not only put, and it's also said that she was suffering from a very depressive, you know, she had severe depression. So, you know,
And I'm
even
sure being
through all that, she was still helping people. So
right.
it goes to show that, you know, back then they thought that, oh, you had these issues, you're disabled. But
Yeah.
she was a real person, like, dealing with these issues and still able to do all of this. And now I look at myself and I'm like, oh my God, like, some days I feel like I can't do anything. And she was out here saving the world. So
Yeah, well, and you know that she also had to suffer some PTSD, I would think, what we call PTSD now from being on the battlefield. You know, that's so prevalent now with our
mhm.
military. I can't imagine that it was, you know, much different back then. They're still witnessing horrible, horrible things. Um, so yeah, I mean, the conditions. I mean, I've seen pictures and documentaries. I read, you know, reading some articles about it, and it is just insane what they thought would cure the insane. Um, you know, and if I'm not mistaken, in the early 1900s, maybe around 1920, there was a sterilization program for those that were either like physically handicapped, you know, maybe had Down syndrome, if you know people were getting it back then, or just, you know, having a mental illness, and there were sterilization programs to off these people. And you know, that stopped. So I guess they figured, well, let's erect a building and throw them in there and do basically the same damn thing. Um, so yes, Gloria did a great thing there, and you know, turning that mental health system around, because you know, it still could use some, you know, help, I think. Nick, you're shaking your head yes, pretty strong there. What do you
Yes.
think is, you know, needs to be changed? What direction are we going? In the right direction, the way mental health you know, laws and whatnot are?
Um, so like I can speak to the aspect of like the medication side and like just the care side of it, because that's where I've been for a lot of years. Um, even like, so, you know, like I said, I live just outside of St. Louis. And right now we're really struggling for individuals that need a psychiatrist to find a psychiatrist.
Hmm.
Right. And so, like, we have a lot of individuals who could possibly benefit from trying medication to see if that's going to work. But we can't find anybody, or they're waiting 6 months to a year
Mhm.
to even get in. And then, like, some of my people are coming back to me and I was like, well, that was a waste of time because they didn't even listen to anything that I had to say. Which then leads me to like the point of like, because we have so little, like, right, so now like all of these psychiatrists are overwhelmed with patients that they're just trying to get them in and out,
Yeah.
right? Like they're just like, it's kind of like herding cattle, unfortunately. Like let me, like, let's just get you through, get you seen, get you on, like, you know. And then so when I was working with another program with that helped severe and chronic individuals, like I always had them make sure to advocate for themselves, and like anybody for anything needs to be a good advocate for yourself when going to any kind of doctor, right?
Mhm.
But just definitely making sure, like, especially when the psychiatry aspect of it is like they're just kind of pushing you through, you know, you want to make sure you go in there and be like, well, A, B, C, and D. Like if they're just going to push you through, then make sure that you're getting the best out of that time. And so, like, that's where I see the struggle of it being at the moment. You know, people are asking for help, but then feeling very disgruntled in the help that they're getting because like they're waiting forever. Nobody's listening to them. And like, and now I have to wait a year and I feel like, you know, I'm not going to make it. How do I continue on? And that's where the aspect of it is. Like, I mean, I will say, like, I feel grateful that the stigma is starting to decrease with mental health. And I don't know if that's because a lot of some celebrities have come out and is like, listen, you know, like I suffer from A, B, C, and D. If that's helping, then great. You know, like there does need to be some more work done. I mean, I think in my opinion, everybody suffers from some kind of mental illness at some point in their life.
Yeah.
Like, right. Like it does not have to be like the word mental health does not have to signify, in my opinion, something severe and chronic.
Yeah.
Like, right. Like it doesn't need to be the extreme. And I think
it's
that's where
that way a lot of times.
Yes, I agree. You know, I mean, like I myself, like, it's almost been 4 years ago. Like, you know, I struggled with my own mental health and was ready to take my own life. You know, I laid in bed for 4 days with a knife just cutting on my arm and poking at it and just blood all over the place. You know, and if it wasn't for a friend just to kind of like out of the blue be like, hey, we're going out to have, you know, some drinks or whatever, you coming with us? And I was like, nah, I don't think so. And because she knew me, she was like, you need to get your behind out of bed, like, because I'm taking you out of that apartment now. So, you know, and then since then, like my journey has been to get in a better place. You know, and I think some of even that has helped me in making some of the connections that I make even with my clients, because like, you know, I've kind of
been there.
Yeah.
I've been there, you know, and I can empathize and sympathize with them and you know, provide a listening ear, and they're not thinking, well, this person doesn't even know anything with how this even feels. Which, you know, like is sometimes a struggle for when people are looking for a therapist, right? Like they want to have somebody who can make sure that they can reciprocate things with. But yeah, going back to, you know, where we are in mental health wise, like it's just on the care side of it. You know, I know a lot of people, they want somebody that has a great bedside manner. But unfortunately I feel like, especially in this area, like we just don't have that because the doctors are so overwhelmed with the amount of people.
Yeah.
There was just a couple of things I wanted to touch on about, you know, a couple of things you brought up. You know, you had said that even the people that are trying to help us are very overwhelmed. And now those, you know, those therapists, those psychologists, those psychiatrists, they need someone to talk to about what they're going through. Cause I can only imagine like how hard it is to be like, I'm trying to help this person so much and it's just not helping, you know, which I know if I were in those shoes, like I know that would severely affect me. Cause it's like, I'm trying to help, and I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. So then, you know, then those people need the help as well. Not that they're suffering from an illness so much, but that they now need their voices heard.
Right.
You know, and then, you know, you had also talked about how your friend who knew you reached out to you. And I know I always text you about this because Nick will always post about how, like, probably every couple of weeks or so, she would post that, you know, oh, I'm at Red Robin with my friend. And I would always text her if I hadn't seen that post in a while. And I'm like, hey, I haven't been to Red Robin in a while, you know, like, so it's just the little checking in with the people that, you know, are dealing with these issues. And we've touched upon this before on other episodes about check on your friends.
Yes.
Because sometimes that makes a difference because, you know, you're in bed for 4 days, like you said, and you're like, nobody cares about me. Because if I can't care about myself, how do I expect anybody else to care about me? I know that I think that And not that I think that I'm the only one that thinks that, like, but I think a lot of people think that, and they're just maybe afraid to say it. They're not accepting that fact. But just because you don't see that you care about yourself doesn't mean that nobody else cares about you. That's a point I just want to strongly put out there, because
Hmm.
there is always at least one person that cares about you. And, you know, I talked about this on another podcast, and it was something that somebody had said to me, and they were like, I would rather have 4 quarters than 10 dimes, because those 4 quarters make up so much more um, than the 10 dimes, who will be like, oh, hey, here and there.
Hmm.
But when you have people that are more invested in your life and in your friendships, they're able to help more.
Yeah.
And now there is a comment that I just want to touch upon. So
Mhm.
Isaac said another big difficulty is lack of health insurance, and it's just too expensive
Yeah.
for the insurance, and then treatment themselves. And that's why a lot of people don't get help, even though they realize that they need it. And I know myself, my psychiatrist doesn't take my insurance. Um, and I'm very comfortable with him. So I pay out of pocket, and it's not cheap. And that's
Mhm.
just to get the help that I need from him. Um, Thankfully, my psychologist, which I joke about this because me and my psychologist, I've been with her for about 5 years now. So, we have a very close relationship, not crossing any boundaries, but like, we fully understand the situation we're in. And sorry, distractions. Um, and now my mind has totally cleared. But so then, Ashley has said that people are not listening, and that just makes you not want to reach out for more help, because you're like, oh, what's
Yeah.
the point? Like, it's not making a difference. And we've said, like, it's like dating, trying to find the right person to talk to, and then you're trying to find the right medications that work. And I know we've talked about it before, about sometimes it
Mhm.
can take up to 6 different medications just just to help you. And it's very discouraging, because it's like you put so much effort into all of these things, and sometimes I feel like people, and I've done it myself, um I just fully stop medications because I'm like, it's not helping me anyways, so why am I
Mhm.
doing this? Why am I putting myself through this?
Mhm.
um I joke around that my nightstand is a pharmacy in and of itself, because I have all my bottles lined up. Um, and then I look at it as, I'm like, I want to make myself happy. I don't want to rely on all these pills. I don't want to rely on going to a psychiatrist once a month to see if these meds are helping. I don't want to depend on going to see my psychologist twice a week. And like I said, it's been 5 years with this psychologist, and I feel like I'm still as in a dark place as I was 5 years ago. So I'm like, why do I keep putting all this effort in it? And a lot of people, it's really discouraging,
Yeah.
and they just quit. Um, but for Isaac saying that, it's expensive, and health insurance doesn't cover it. So I just want to, we have the banner that rolls across our podcast all the time. Um, you can call or text 988, and
Mhm.
it's free.
Yeah.
If you need someone to talk to, it's free. So that is an option for those that are struggling with the financial aspect. If you need someone to talk to, you're going through a difficult time. And I know myself, I don't like calling people. So texting is a really good option,
Mhm.
because I feel like, and other people might relate to this too, you're able to put so much more into a text, because you're like, if I say this out loud, it means so much more. Um, but texting it is like, okay, like, maybe it's not so bad. But
Right.
I feel like speaking it into existence makes it feel worse. I don't know if you two agree.
Well, I think for like today's generation, right? Like texting is a fantastic thing.
Mhm.
Because I feel like the teenagers are able to express themselves so much more through a
Mhm.
text, or feel like they just that's their mode of communication,
Yeah.
right? So like depending on I think depending on how you grew up, like I mean, I enjoy texting most times now just because like I do a lot of talking throughout the day. And so like I just get tired of
Which is what
talking.
we do, you know.
Right,
We'll sit
right.
there. We were one time we were texting till like what, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning,
Oh, yeah,
because
yeah,
we were both just
crazy.
having
Right,
issues, and
right.
it's good that we both are aware of that. Um, and then I think it's funny because like when we do have those text conversations, we both say to each other like, "Oh, I should check in more." Like I know we have both said it to each other. Um,
Yes.
so it's Ashley's even commented and said, "Check on your friends. It's important." It is,
It's
like
very important.
even if it isn't as much as you want it to be, like I always feel bad because I'm like, oh, I should text. I gotta text Nick and check on her, and then it's like something happens and you get distracted and you don't
Oh,
do it.
yeah. Life happens, like, right?
Yeah.
That's
It
the
does.
struggle sometimes. Life continues to happen, especially when you have a family, like even outside of my job, like I do umpiring for
Mhm.
girls fast pitch. So sometimes on the weekends, I'm like super busy. And so, and I don't get home until late. Like I don't sleep. And but I'm also a person like, I'm not going to bother somebody because I don't know what their sleep schedule is. Just because I only get 3 to 4 hours doesn't mean that somebody else is able to get a heck of a lot more.
Wow, you get
But I
3 or 4 hours?
Yeah, yeah.
That's a lot for me,
um,
anyway.
right.
No, I was
But
suffering from
I
terrible insomnia, you know. Klonopin has helped me a lot with sleep.
nice. Okay.
I know a lot of people, it's a very controversial medication.
Yeah,
But it has helped me in that aspect, so I am happy about that. I know it's not something that is supposed to be used long term. I've been on it for probably 6 months now. Um, but me and my psychiatrist, have seen that it's working. Um,
Mhm.
and I felt I joked around about, and I know I shouldn't joke, but like we have dark humor to deal with these issues.
it seems
Um,
like, yeah, everybody, suffering has some kind of dark humor. I
mhm.
make fun of myself all the time.
Well,
Okay.
and what was it? Robin Williams. I know we always see that meme where it's like the people that make people laugh the most
Yeah,
are the ones that are suffering the
yeah.
most.
Yep.
And I had saw my psychiatrist earlier in the week. And up until now, I was seeing him once a month for about the past year or so. Um, and when we went to make our next appointment, he was like, "Yeah, I think I'll see you in 3 months." And I was just like, "Oh my God, am I getting better and I don't realize it? Like, I don't have to see you for 3 months. Did I make an improvement that even I don't know?" Um, because I'm sure both of you have seen that people on the outside see a different version of you than you see yourself. You're
Absolutely.
like, "I'm not getting any better. I'm in this dark hole that I can't get out of." Um, and then I had somebody even comment, they're like, "It feels like you're doing better." And my psychologist, so I see her a lot more and talk to her more. She was like, she was like, "I've seen a big improvement in you." And I'm just like, "Really? Really? Mm, Is there?" Um, but again, I feel like I'm doing all the talking.
No,
Um,
not at all.
passing the mic back.
I've felt like that a lot lately. Like, I put a lot of work into my sobriety and because I do have that dual diagnosis, the sobriety and the borderline and depressive disorder. Um, but I still, especially I've noticed, pretty heavy this past week, a lot of those intrusive thoughts that can affect, interacting with people. And they've just been coming on, and I sometimes feel like you said, Lydia, it's like, what am I even getting better? Because this is the shit I don't want. But that's where I believe DBT and CBT would be helpful in, dealing with that. But it comes in spurts, and you do kind of feel like, just like having to go through so many therapists, can really discourage a person. Like, why do I keep doing this? I keep failing, and that's a huge thing for me. That brings on a lot of anxiety, fear of failing. I would get it bad with any kind of test I have to take. It was horrible. Still is. But yeah, you gotta keep going. You gotta keep trying. As much of a pain in the ass that it is, you gotta keep holding on to, to quote "Falling in Reverse" song. If you haven't heard it, check it out. It's pretty inspirational. But and again, to drive home the point, as we do quite a bit here on the podcast, please, again, we sound repetitive, but we're going to keep driving it home. Check on your friends. It only
repetition is learning. Learning is repetition.
Absolutely. It's like muscle memory. Oh, I gotta, do this. I try to make a point to hit up somebody, at least once or twice a week or whatnot. How you doing? I have people doing it,
Otis does it to me, and I always feel bad because I don't check on him, and I'm like, oh man, he always makes.
Well, that's all right. I just beat you to the punch, because we end up, telling each other what the hell's going on. So it all works out. But
I always tell anybody, I'm like, I will always be there for anybody that needs help. If they need it, they reach out. I may not get back to you right away because,
kids,
I don't want to talk. But I do appreciate both of you, because you've always, been there, and you get back to me.
Well, that's what we need to do. When it seems like when the general public who have fallen victim to the stigma, it's hard to reach out to those people where you feel like you're going to be judged. And I had a conversation earlier where I said it feels sometimes, more beneficial to talk with somebody who is also dealing with a lot of the same issues that you are, because how are they going to judge you when they're dealing with maybe the same things, which may be in part why it's so hard to get a therapist, because you are going to somebody that you presume does not deal with these things, because they're helping somebody. How can you do that? And you're, struggling, and you are, in fact, one of those who, deals with things, and you still have your own life. You still have your own traumas, your own this and that. And, I think it's a wonderful thing that somebody, you took your pain and turned it into a passion, man. And you're helping people, and we need more therapists like yourself. I want to say that. But it's a tough journey, and
for sure.
You're going to hit a lot of speed bumps, but you got to keep going back. And that first call, I can't tell you how long I sat and I dialed the number. And I just sat there and stared at that last number. It was so hard to push that button. And I did, and I got, with a therapist. I told him I didn't really think it was happening. Anything good was coming about this. It didn't feel right to me. I'm going to take off. He's a nice guy. I had nothing personal. I just didn't feel like it was benefiting me. But that did start me on a journey in which, at a slow pace, that got me to where I am today.
You're the tortoise. You're not the hare.
I'm not the hare. I mean, I got a lot of hair, but I'm not the hare. I am the tortoise. I am just just taking life as it happens, trying not to be, too hard on myself.
I just put that comment up on the screen, and thank you, Ashley, for watching and tuning in and being so interactive. And she wrote that she's 59 now, and she's been struggling since she was 28 to find the right medications and therapists. And I applaud you for continuing on that journey, and I do hope that you are able to find someone that will help you continue that journey in a positive light. And Nick, you said something very important earlier about you tell your clients, if you feel like the connection is not there, that we are not working. Have people taken you up on that?
No, not really. I've been very lucky in that people kind of like my style. I think it's because like I'm very honest with them. I'm not like placating anybody. Like there's been maybe a couple, I don't even know. Like I have people that haven't come back, but I don't know if that's because that we weren't connecting or vibing. It could have been in regards to insurance, because I have had some of that happen. I do, because I'm a social worker and I have a big heart, unfortunately, at times. I try to work with individuals who are paying out of pocket. Like what can we do to like get you the help that you need? But then I kind of, like unfortunately, it's my living, right? So like, how can we make this an even balance? So I sit down with people and we talk about their budgets and what can they afford, and for how so that way, like I'm not trying to like create more stress on somebody who's already trying to manage some mental health stuff, right? Because I mean our journey is a marathon, right? It's not a sprint. So we have to be able to pace ourselves and find out where that balance is and that importance. But I do put it out there, and I think with a lot of people, they might just get embarrassed if they don't really make that connection. I have had people stop seeing me because I've called them out on some of their stuff and they weren't ready to make a change. But yeah, nobody's really been like, I just don't think this is working. Who else would I be able to try? But yeah, I do put it out there because it's hard. It's hard. We're not meant to be happy with everybody.
Well,
exactly.
And you spoke on him. I didn't mean to cut you off, Otis.
No, that's all I was going to say was exactly.
You spoke on embarrassment. And I know, like myself included, like how do you go to somebody that you don't know and say, you know what? I haven't showered in a week. And I haven't had the mental strength to take care of myself. Like I haven't changed my clothes in a few days. Like I haven't done this, and I don't, like, how do you tell somebody that you don't know that? Like I feel like it's embarrassing just for myself. And then to try and explain that to somebody is embarrassing. Like I don't know if anybody else watches like these like hoarder episodes, or I started watching this new show about like cleaning. Like they go in, and there's this girl on TikTok who does free cleanings for people, and she goes in there, no judgment. She understands that these people are dealing with mental health issues, and she's like, there's just pizza boxes stacked up. There's dirty dishes everywhere. There's this and that. And she's like, people want to take care of these things, but they look at it and it becomes so overwhelming that they don't even know where to start. And they're embarrassed because they're like, how do I explain this to people? Like, oh, you can't come over, all those things. But I think, it's great that you really understand that.
Yeah.
So I applaud you on that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we need more therapists like yourself, for sure.
I do feel like this is going to have to be like a 2-part episode,
Oh man.
because we only talked on one of the cycles of reform movement, and I think it's very important to
I know.
delve into the other
Oh, for
3
sure.
to continue on, because I mean, you can't fit over 300 years of mental health, a timeline of mental health
Yeah.
improvement into an hour episode.
No, not at all. Definitely a part 2. This may
Yeah.
be a small series. May have to,
Yeah.
you know, do one on each of them, maybe,
Yeah.
you know, 3 or 4 apart, because it does. It gets a little in depth.
And if Nick is willing to come back, that's great. If you're not,
Listen,
we understand too.
anytime. Like, I've really enjoyed myself. Like, this has been fun, and like, this is like, mental health has become a very big passion for me, in wanting to help people. You know, they say that most therapists get into therapy or social work because they themselves have gone through some stuff. And so for me, that's definitely the case. I have some stuff in my childhood that, you know, I've been struggling with. And I've always wanted to be there for somebody that I needed for me. And that's what drives my whole thing. You know, there's so much, you know, like the CBT, the DBT, like there's all those therapies out there. The thing that seems to really work for me so far in all of the sessions that I've done with people is just letting them be heard, you know, and working through the trauma. Because, you know, there's been so much where, like, you go through it and nobody wants to talk about it. Let's keep it a secret, don't tell nobody. And that's so unhealthy. Which is why I was where I was 4 years ago, ready to just, you know, check out. And I put a lot of work into myself, and you know, and then being a therapist, you can't provide services and not do them yourself, because then I just feel like a big hypocrite. So
yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
It kind of forced you, you know, to do it to you know, for yourself.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this will definitely we'll definitely have to do a 2, 3, 4-parter, whatever it takes to get through this, because this is very interesting. We've been talking about the community part, right? Is that right?
We talked about the moral treatment era. So then the next part would be the mental hygiene movement.
Okay.
So I think it would be interesting to delve into that.
Yeah. You have to send me some links where you're getting your info. I need some sources.
You need notes.
I do. God, I'm so horrible about that.
I will say, I did not write out my notes today. So I was, you know, looking at the websites. I was getting my information.
It
So
works.
I have to get back to writing my notes, because I feel like when I'm looking at these websites, I'm like, oh, it doesn't flow with what I'm saying. Like, but my notes I can put into order of what needs to be said.
I wrote down notes, and I just got like all over the place, because I went from, like, I found what you were talking about in regards to like the mental hygiene, right? Like in the Civil War. But then I started getting on this kick of like Pavlov's theory with the dog, and then I went down like what do I have, like the hierarchy of needs. I was like, well, I've gone on the left field.
That I start to joke around, because, you know, my psychiatrist said ADHD. So now I don't know if anybody's watched the show Mom, but one of the main characters, she starts going to therapy like later on in life. She's mid-50s, I think. And he diagnoses her with ADHD. And after that, it becomes an ongoing joke. She was like, oh, it's because of my ADHD. And I joke around too, and say that. I'm like, oh, you know, it's my ADHD that I didn't get this done. Even yesterday, I was trying to like deep clean in my house, and I had started a project in like several different rooms. And I'm like, I feel like I've gotten nowhere. And I'm like, I was doing stuff all day, but I was so spread out that I'm like, it didn't look like I did anything. Um, so for those who are suffering, just because you're doing little things in different areas doesn't mean that eventually it's all going to come together.
Yeah.
Right.
The first step is getting up and doing stuff.
Mhm.
That definitely helps. And there's definitely going to be days where you just want to lay in bed, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And
There's
that is
nothing
okay.
wrong with that. That
That's
comes
right.
straight from a therapist. There you go. There's nothing. Take
Yes.
that
Right.
day. Just laying around doing nothing is
Right.
self-care, as you were alluding to
Absolutely.
earlier. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
it's very
self-care.
important to rest. It's very important to rest. Like I think, like in society, we're just so pressured to like be on the go all the time. But when do you rest? When do you let your body rest and then just enjoy in the moment?
Yeah, because people look at you
Absolutely.
as being lazy. And
Yeah.
you're
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
I'm not lazy. I'm like, I literally have nothing more to give.
Right.
Right.
And I know we've talked about the spoon theory before. Um, and for those who are not familiar with it, the spoon theory is, say you start off the day, you have 20 spoons. Um, and just getting up out of bed and brushing your teeth takes 10 spoons. So now you have 10 spoons for the whole rest of the day. And that includes, getting dressed, making a meal, trying to get any type of work done that you need, whether it be your job, or just things around the house, and once you're out of spoons, just have nothing left to give that day. So you said it's important to rest, and sometimes that's what you have to do. You
Mhm.
can't pour from an empty cup.
No.
Correct.
Um,
As my mom would say, you can't pull blood from a turnip.
Correct.
So,
that is the first time I've heard that one.
yeah,
Oh,
it's a good one.
it is a
I
good one.
use it. I use it all the time, especially when it comes to paying bills. Um, this was a great talk, Nick. Thank you for chatting with us about the therapy, about institutionalization. That's a big one.
It's great to have
Um,
that perspective from somebody who's in that profession.
yeah, who's working with those people, us. Um, and
Well, I'm part
I
of that
look.
group too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look forward to part 2. And yes, as we dive more into this, you're always welcome, Nick, if you want to jump in on the conversation. It would be great to have you back on. Any parting words, Nick? Any words of inspiration you like to throw out there before we
Oh,
end?
now I feel like I'm on the spot.
Kind of.
Like I get like, don't be afraid to reach out. You will eventually find somebody who will hear you. And it's very important to keep pushing for yourself because
Yeah.
somebody out there does care about you, even if you don't care about yourself right now. Like Lydia said, there's at least one person who would rather listen to you, talk about anything that's on your mind at any hour of the day than to be standing and giving your eulogy.
Yeah.
Definitely continue to push for yourself. Like that's all we have in this world anyway is ourselves, and we need to matter to ourselves the most, very first of all, and take care of ourselves.
Absolutely. Great words of advice. I know my mortality comes more into play the older you get. You start thinking, you're on limited time. But another great show. Thank you again, Nick. Lydia, any parting words?
Just realize that there are options out there for you, as simple as a text to 988. Could make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
Um,
I did it. I know.
so I think that's important. you know, and Nick, you said you offer telehealth. A lot of therapists are doing that. So it's as simple as, you know, a quick Google search
Mhm.
of there's a lot of apps I think now that are out that, you
Yep.
know, it's just somebody who, you know, will talk to you over the computer. You don't, you know, like Sean had said in one of his comments that agoraphobia was a huge thing for him. So
Mhm.
getting out of the house to find help, you know, some people just can't do. So I think it's great that we have that opportunity now, in the evolution of mental treatment, that we've reached that point that we have this. So
Yeah.
thankfully for technology that we have that.
Yep. Technology, a double-edged sword. And
Yeah.
before I hit the old outro, the only thing I want to say, and I'm gonna say it again. Check on your friends, check in, see what's up. And trust me, you may live to regret it if you don't.
Hmm.
You never know. So check on your friends. We'll see you in 2 weeks.